I'm a 45-year-old guy, married to my wife, who's 43, for almost 2 decades now, 18 years to be exact. Together we've got 2 kids, a daughter who's 16 and a son who's 14, and for the longest time, I honestly thought we had a really solid, happy little family. We first met back in our mid-20s through some mutual friends, and right from the start, it just felt easy. She's always been sharp, funny, and carries this no-nonsense attitude that I've admired since day one. Over the years, we built a rhythm that made our marriage feel strong and stable, things like Sunday morning pancake breakfasts, trading off school pickups and dinners depending on who had time, and late-night detective shows once the kids were asleep. Not everything's been perfect, no marriage is, but I always felt we were honest with each other, and that counted for a lot. I handle most of the financial side of things, while she takes on more of the kid-related responsibilities. It's a system that's always worked for us. Work-wise, I'm home most days, while she balances a part-time job with the kids' busy schedules. We even share a home office, me using it through the day, and her often taking it over in the evenings when she feels like working. Lately, with our daughter preparing for college and our son just starting high school, life has felt especially full. A lot of our recent conversations have been about saving for tuition, house repairs, or just coordinating rides for all the kids' activities. Pretty normal middle-aged married life, at least from the outside. One thing worth knowing about me, I carried some trust issues into this marriage from a previous relationship. My ex cheated on me years before I met my wife, and it crushed me. It took a long time to rebuild myself after that. When my wife and I started getting serious, I was upfront about it. She understood and promised that honesty would always come first. And I believed her without hesitation. In nearly 2 decades together, she's never once given me a real reason to doubt her. Sure, we've clashed over money or disagreed about parenting decisions, but those were normal fights we always worked through. Cheating, though, that was never on the table, at least not as far as I knew. She's been vocal about how much she despises cheaters. She went through the same pain in her own past when a college boyfriend cheated on her, long before we crossed paths. That shared history kind of bonded us back then. For that reason, I never thought infidelity would be something I'd have to worry about with her. But recently, something feels different. The past few months, little things have been nagging at me. Nothing that screams affair right away, no classic warning signs, but subtle shifts that make me uneasy. She seems distracted a lot, zoning out in conversations and barely catching what I'm saying. When I ask if she's okay, she'll laugh it off or claim she's just tired or thinking about a project. Fair enough, she's juggling work, kids, and helping her mom, but it's unusual for her. She used to be the one calling me out when my mind wandered, not the other way around. Speaking of her mom, that's another piece of this. My father-in-law passed away last year after a battle with cancer, and it hit the whole family hard, especially my wife. She's always been very close to her parents, and losing her dad shattered her. Since then, she's made it a point to visit her mom every couple of weeks so her mom doesn't feel so alone. Her mom still lives in the small town where my wife grew up, about an hour from us. Typically, my wife leaves on Saturday morning and comes back Sunday evening. I've always supported that. My father-in-law meant a lot to me too, and I want her mom to feel cared for. At first, these visits seemed normal, even healthy, but lately, they've gotten more frequent. Sometimes she goes every single weekend, or she'll even head out Friday night after our son's soccer game and stay until Sunday evening. I didn't question it much because grief isn't predictable, and if being in her childhood home helps her heal, who am I to stop that? Still, I began noticing odd inconsistencies. She'd mentioned doing something at her mom's place, like cleaning out the garage, but then later her mom would casually tell me over the phone that the garage still needed to be tackled. Little contradictions like that. Each time, I brushed it off. Maybe her mom forgot, maybe my wife didn't want to admit she picked up food instead of cooking, whatever. My wife's never been a good liar, so these slips didn't feel calculated, just messy. But there was one conversation that really made my stomach drop. A few weeks ago, I called my mother-in-law to help her arrange a handyman for some repairs. While thanking me, she said she was grateful both my wife and I had been helping so much. Then she casually added something about how one of my wife's old friends had also been a blessing around the house. That threw me completely off. When I asked what she meant, she explained that a guy from my wife's high school, let's call him Jake, had been stopping by when my wife visited. He'd been pitching in with heavy lifting, fixing fences, even painting the shed recently. I felt my chest tighten. My wife had told me she painted that shed herself not long ago. I even offered to help that weekend, but she brushed me off, saying she had it handled. Now I find out this Jake has been around, not once, but apparently on several occasions. For context, Jake isn't just some old friend. He's basically my wife's high school or maybe early college ex. I met him once years back at a hometown event, and my wife brushed it off then, said that part of her life was long over and I had nothing to worry about. I believed her and barely thought of him again. But now, here he is, back in her hometown, spending time with her whenever she visits her mom. On its own, maybe it wouldn't be a huge deal. People reconnect when tragedy hits. Maybe he was just trying to pay respects and decided to help her family out. That's logical. But if it's so harmless, why keep it from me? We've always been open about friendships with the opposite sex. I've got female friends, she's got male friends, it's never been an issue. The secrecy is what rattles me. It feels deliberate, like she's hiding it. After hanging up with my mother-in-law, I forced myself to act normal even though my mind was spinning in circles. That night, when my wife got home, I asked how her mom was doing and casually threw in a question about whether anyone else had been helping out around the house. When I asked her straight out, she brushed it off and said it was just her and her mom spending time together, catching up, and doing a few small chores. That was the entire answer, no mention of anyone else. I even pressed a little and said something like, "You didn't have any help with that shed? Must have been a tough job to do solo." She looked me dead in the eye and swore it wasn't a problem, that it took a couple of afternoons but she managed it just fine on her own. That moment has stuck with me because I know now she flat out lied. I didn't let on that I knew about Jake, but it's obvious she intentionally left him out. Maybe she thought I'd react poorly or get jealous, but even if that were the case, it doesn't sit right. For years, we've always been transparent about who we're with and what we're doing when apart. It's been normal for us to send each other little updates. She'd text me a photo of a pie she and her mom baked, or I'd send her a picture of our son pushing the lawnmower, proud of himself for learning a new chore. But recently, when she's away, she's been harder to get a hold of. I'll send a quick question, something small, and hours pass without a reply. Before, she used to answer from her mom's place fairly quickly. Now she always has some explanation. She left her phone in the car while shopping, or she was in the shower, or the phone was buried on silent at the bottom of her purse. Could be true, sure. But added to everything else, it feels like more than coincidence. At this point, I haven't confronted her head on. I'm trying to stay rational, but my gut is screaming at me that something isn't right. I've learned the hard way not to dismiss instincts like this. Still, I don't want to accuse her without proof. I haven't told anyone in my real life either because I don't want to create gossip or ruin her reputation if it turns out to be nothing. But the truth is, I feel left in the dark, like I'm being lied to by the person I trust most. So here I am, writing this down, hoping for an outside perspective. I haven't changed how I act around her, but I'm paying closer attention now, double-checking details, seeing if her stories line up. It's a miserable headspace to be in, questioning someone you've built your life with. I keep wondering if I should just flat out ask if something's going on with Jake or if I should dig a little deeper first so she can't just deny it and make me second-guess myself. I hate the idea of turning into some paranoid snoop, but I also don't want to be that oblivious husband who misses all the signs. This is the woman I've spent nearly half my life with, and the thought of her crossing that line makes me sick. I want to believe she hasn't, but right now, I just don't know. Update 1. After sharing my first thoughts, the overwhelming advice was to trust my instincts and quietly gather more information before confronting her. A lot of people suggested checking things like phone records or bank statements. That clicked with me since I already handle the finances and the phone plan. So, I logged in and pulled up our cell phone bill. We've got unlimited everything, so I usually don't bother with the details, but the logs are still there. I scrolled through her numbers history, and it didn't take long for something to jump out. Over the past few months, there's been a steady flood of activity with one number I didn't recognize. Hundreds of text messages, plenty of calls. Most of the numbers in her log are familiar: mine, the kids, her mom, a few of her friends. This one stood out. The texts weren't just daytime ones either, there were late-night exchanges, even some very early morning ones. I looked up the area code, and sure enough, it matches her hometown. My gut says that number belongs to Jake. I sat on it for a day, debating whether to call it immediately, but I forced myself not to react impulsively. Instead, I decided to test things out during her next supposed trip to her mom's. Earlier that week, she had told me she'd be heading over Friday after work and wouldn't be back until Sunday evening. I told her it sounded fine, the kids and I would handle things at home. Then, once she was gone, I made a casual call to my mother-in-law. The idea was to chat a bit, see how she was doing, and casually confirm whether my wife was really there. We made small talk, asked about the weather, how she was holding up. After a minute or two, I said I wanted to ask my wife something but she wasn't replying to my texts, and I wondered if she was busy with chores. That's when my mother-in-law said something that made my blood run cold. She sounded puzzled and told me my wife wasn't even there that weekend. In fact, she said my wife had told her she had a big project to focus on and planned to visit the following weekend instead. I had to bite down on my own tongue and take a deep breath just to stop myself from reacting. I forced a calm voice and pretended I had mixed up the dates, saying something like, I must have confused the weekends. I thanked my mother-in-law for clearing it up, and she didn't seem to think anything was odd. We talked briefly about the handyman I was helping line up, then I wished her well and ended the call. That left me with the ugly truth. My wife told me she was spending the weekend at her mom's, while telling her mom the exact opposite. Which means she wasn't where she said she'd be. She made up a cover story. She's unaccounted for, and I can't think of one honest reason why. The only thing that makes sense is she's with Jake. Maybe it's a getaway, maybe she's staying at his place, I don't know. What I do know is she isn't at her mom's like she promised. After that call, my hands were trembling. My whole body felt like it was buzzing, like my nerves were short-circuiting. Still, I forced myself to check one more thing before letting my emotions take over. I logged into our joint bank account to see if there were any recent charges that might tell me more. Sure enough, I found them. A gas station near her hometown makes sense if she drove out that way. But then two transactions popped up about 30 miles further, in a neighboring city. One was from a decent hotel chain just before midnight, and the other was from a restaurant earlier that evening, right around dinner time. My stomach dropped. That city is a tourist spot, wine country, bed and breakfasts, cozy little getaways. We've even gone there together in the past for anniversary weekends. The transaction history painted a pretty clear picture. Unless she's suddenly taken up travel writing or decided to splurge on a solo night away, I already knew the truth. She was with him. Jake. And she lied to both me and her mom to make it happen. I didn't confront her immediately. She was supposed to come back Sunday evening, and I figured I'd wait. Maybe she'd even stop at her mom's on the way back to keep her story believable, maybe not. Either way, I knew I'd have to address it as soon as she walked in. I spent that night pacing circles around the house, staring at my phone, and drifting into these blank stares where my brain just wouldn't shut off. Eventually I collapsed from exhaustion and got a few hours of restless sleep. I decided the confrontation would happen privately, away from the kids. I wasn't sure if I'd do it the second she walked in or later that night, but it would be that same day. I had more than enough proof. She had no clue I already knew. Honestly, I didn't even know how to start that conversation. I was furious, but underneath that was this strange cold clarity, like my brain had flipped into survival mode. I kept rehearsing different ways it might go, but I knew it would all blow off script once we were face to face. Update 2. I'm running on barely any sleep, but I'll try to put this down clearly. Last night, I finally did it. I confronted her. Without question, it was one of the hardest conversations of my life. She got home around 6 on Sunday evening, looking a little worn out but acting normal. I was on edge the entire time, forcing myself through dinner with the kids like nothing was wrong. My nerves were practically electric, but I managed to hold it together until the kids went off to their rooms. Once it was just us, I asked if we could talk. The tone of my voice must have given something away, because she instantly looked nervous. We went into the home office, closed the door. I stayed standing while she sat down. My heart was pounding so loud I could feel it in my throat, but outwardly, I tried to look calm. I told her point blank that I knew she hadn't been at her mom's that weekend. She immediately went on the defensive, insisting she had, and even said, "You talked to my mom, you know that." I cut her off and told her I had spoken to her mom myself, and I knew she had lied to both of us. Then I laid out what else I knew: the phone records, the bank charges. Her face drained of color, her eyes went huge, and then she broke down crying. She lunged for me, sobbing, apologizing, trying to touch me, but I stepped back. I didn't raise my voice. I was cold, steady. I told her not to touch me and asked her to explain. She kept repeating it wasn't what I thought, that she was planning to tell me eventually. Which, let's be real, is garbage. If I hadn't uncovered it, she would have kept going. Finally, she admitted it. Yes, she's been seeing Jake. It started a few months back. According to her, it wasn't intentional. They reconnected after her dad's funeral, started talking, leaning on each other during grief. Then one day they met for coffee, and that spiraled into regular meetups. She swore it was only emotional at first, that she already felt guilty about even that, so she kept it from me. But eventually, they crossed the line. She confessed they'd slept together, first time a couple of months ago during one of her so-called mom visits. And yes, this past weekend was another rendezvous, which I already knew from the hotel charge. By then she was in full tears, saying she was sorry, that she never wanted to hurt me, that losing her dad sent her into a fog, and Jake was just there at the right time. She kept insisting she still loved me. But hearing her excuses made me sick. I told her flat out, leaning on a friend is one thing, but sneaking around, Building a secret relationship, lying over and over, and sleeping with someone else? That's not grief. That's a choice. A choice she made again and again. And I didn't hold back about exactly how disgusted and betrayed I felt. I reminded her that she knew exactly how shattered I'd been after my last relationship ended the same way. She'd promised me she'd never do that to me, and yet she went and did the one thing she swore she wouldn't. She cheated on me. That stung even more because both of us had been betrayed before. It felt like everything we'd built together, every scrap of trust, had been tossed away for what? A fling with an old flame? She tried to explain. Over and over she said it wasn't about me, that she'd been depressed and felt this emptiness inside her, and reconnecting with him had somehow filled that gap. She painted it as some kind of escape. I had no sympathy for that void she never bothered to tell me about. When I bluntly asked if she was in love with him, she shot back, "No, it wasn't like that, he just understood me when I was a mess, but I never stopped loving you." Hard to feel loved by the person who sneaks off to a hotel with someone else. At some point the whole conversation looped, her sobbing, her apologies and excuses, and me spelling out how thoroughly she'd broken us. I was done. I told her I couldn't look at her and that I needed space to breathe and think. I told her I didn't know what this meant for our marriage yet, but I couldn't make sense of anything with her in the house. She begged me not to decide anything rash and to calm down, which made me laugh bitterly. I'm not the one who spent months sneaking around. If anything, I'd been remarkably composed given the situation. In the end I told her to go stay with her mom for a while, starting Monday. It was late, the kids were asleep, and we agreed she'd take the guest room that night. There was no way I was sharing a bed. I couldn't even tolerate being on the same floor, so I crashed on the couch and got maybe an hour or two of broken sleep. I wanted the night to be over. Morning was unbearably awkward. We had to put on a normal face for the kids, feed them, get them out the door, because I'm not ready to drag them into this. We've always tried to keep our problems away from them, and I don't want to wreck how they see their mom overnight. We were civil but painfully quiet. Our daughter asked if we were okay and I lied with the least harmful answer I could, said we were just tired and stressed from work. Not convincing, but it was all I had. After the kids left for school, my wife wanted to talk more, but I told her I had nothing else to add beyond what I said the night before. She suggested therapy, individual and maybe couples counseling, and I told her flat out I wasn't promising anything. My priority right now was the kids and getting through the next few days, and she needed to give me space. She didn't argue, she packed a bag and left for her mom's a few hours later, apologizing again on the way out and promising she'd give me room. I barely responded. I feel like a zombie, exhausted, furious, numb, sometimes all at once. I haven't told anyone in person. Right now you reading this are the only ones who know. My immediate plan is to get through each day for the kids' sake. We fabricated a short-term reason for her absence, saying grandma needs help for a bit because I'm not ready to drag them into the truth until I figure out what comes next. I hate lying to them, but I don't see any kinder option at the moment. That was the initial shock. Less than a week earlier we were a normal family dealing with normal stuff. Now it feels like the ground dropped out from under me. People will tell me to call a lawyer and I probably will when my head stops spinning, but for now I just need a minute to breathe. Update 3. It's been a few weeks since that night and, honestly, it's still a mess. We told the kids we're separated, without the ugly details, and it went about as poorly as you'd expect. My daughter was furious and full of questions I didn't know how to answer without lying or hurting her. My son was in shock and quieter than usual. We reassured them it wasn't their fault and that we both love them, and we stuck with the story that their mom is staying with grandma to give everyone space. I think my daughter suspects more than I've admitted. She's perceptive and has noticed how little her mom has been around. I caught her looking at me with this mix of disappointment and worry that nearly broke me. I hate that this is hurting them. My wife still stays at her mom's most of the time but comes through town sometimes to see the kids. When she does, I make myself scarce. We coordinate only about the kids, texts and short calls, strictly practical. She's respected the distance I asked for, but she still sends occasional apologetic messages begging for a chance to talk or saying she's getting help. From what I'm told, mainly through my mother-in-law and the occasional update, she's been a wreck. My mother-in-law has even called to apologize and insists she doesn't blame me. She sounds angry at her daughter for tearing our family apart. It's a strange place to be. I feel anger toward my wife, sadness for her, and guilt that this all inevitably affects everyone around us. My mother-in-law is already grieving the loss of her husband, and now she's stuck watching her daughter's marriage collapse on top of it. When we spoke, we both agreed that no matter what happens between me and my wife, the kids have to come first. She told me she'd help with the kids anytime I needed and said I'd always be like a son to her, even if my relationship with her daughter doesn't survive. That nearly brought me to tears. The whole situation is just heartbreaking. For me, it's been a roller coaster. Those first days after she left were brutal. I barely slept, barely ate. During the day I held it together for the kids, but at night, once they were in bed, I'd collapse on the couch, drained. I even took a couple of sick days from work because my brain just couldn't focus. Eventually, I opened up to my older brother. He was furious when he found out and demanded I come stay with him, but I didn't want to uproot the kids. Instead, he checks in on us whenever he can, which helps more than I can say. I also confided in a close friend. Ironically, he's a guy who went through a divorce after being the one who cheated, but he's turned his life around since then. Oddly enough, that gave him a unique perspective, and he's been a steady listener. He's the one who pushed me to at least talk to a lawyer. So I did. Quietly. I haven't filed anything, but I needed to know what divorce after 18 years might look like. That meeting was sobering, splitting assets, figuring out custody, maybe even selling the house. The kind of stuff you never think you'll be discussing about your own life. It made everything feel even heavier. I haven't made a final decision yet. Part of me feels divorce is inevitable. I don't know if trust can ever come back, and without trust, what's left to build on? But another part of me hesitates, because of the kids, and because ending nearly 2 decades of marriage feels overwhelming. Some mornings I wake up ready to cut ties and move forward, and other times I stumble across an old photo or memory and the sadness is so thick I can't see a clear path. One practical thing I forced myself to do was get tested. I went to my doctor and asked for a full STD screening, just to be safe. Explaining why I suddenly needed those tests to someone I've known for years was humbling, to say the least. Thankfully, all the results came back clear. A small mercy in the middle of this storm. My wife keeps asking to sit down and talk. Sometimes she suggests with a counselor, sometimes just the two of us. So far, I've said no. I told her I'll let her know if or when I'm ready, but right now, the thought of listening to more apologies or explanations just makes my blood boil. She swears she'll do anything to fix it, but I honestly don't know if there's anything left to fix. Maybe one day I'll agree to hear her out for closure, or at least to make co-parenting smoother, but I'm not there yet. For now, the plan is simple, if you can even call it that. We're separated. We're both focusing on the kids and trying to manage the day-to-day. The holidays are coming up, and I already know they'll be hard to navigate, but life doesn't stop just because your world has imploded. I've made it clear I'm not making any promises beyond today. She knows there's a strong chance I'll move forward with divorce, and she says she won't fight it if I do. I wish I had some wise conclusion or uplifting silver lining to share, but the truth is, I'm still in the middle of it. Maybe clarity will come with time. Maybe it won't. All I can do right now is focus on my kids and get through one day at a time. It's messy, it's painful, but at least the lies are gone. At least now I know what I'm dealing with. And somehow, I'll figure out where to go from here.